Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Banished Naruto and Unlocked His Hidden Potential Through Rage Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Kumogakure no Sato. An elder man was meditating on top of some random boulder. If he had his eyes opened he would be rewarded by the amazing sight that was Kumogakure no Sato, both civilians and shinobis doing their respective routines, children's playing around with their friends, basically, a view that would give him a good amount of peace. His presence reflected power, authority and wisdom. Some would say that he was on par or maybe even surpassed his long-time and now deceased friend Hiruzen Sarutobi if compared. His now long, slightly spiky white hair have almost reached his waist, you still could spot some red streaks on some random spots. There was a slight twitch on his eyebrow and slowly, but surely, opened his eyelids revealing a pair of warm purple eyes and, with a deep and gruff voice, he spoke out loud to no one in particular. Interesting. This chakra. Western gates. 8 figures were seen walking through the gates, 2 giant kanjis for cloud embedded into the equal giant gates, the confirmation that they have indeed and finally arrived their villager in Naruto's case, a foreign one. Though, he held an amusement expression after watching closely the antics of the group of friends and former team had with each other during the trip. During their way back to the village, they encountered the Raikage bodyguards who had introduced themselves as Darui and C, the latter scolding his leader for leaving them behind without any warnings. As they were now walking at a decent pace towards what Naruto assumed to be, the Raikage's tower, he suddenly stiffened as if he was being watched. But just as it came, it instantly vanished in a split of a second. Whoever tried to get a glimpse on me is good. I almost didn't notice. I'm impressed. Yugito, who was walking besides her savior, noticed his body language and promptly asked, "Is everything alright, Naruto-san?" The former Konoha's genin nodded and dismissed her worries with a warm smile that made her cheeks redden a bit much to slight envy of C, who had and still have a crush on the Kumogakure's Jinchuriki, though, he just put that on the back of his mind. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki momentarily shifted his head to the side as if looking to a certain spot in the faraway mountains, and unbeknown to him, on that split of a second, he had locked eyes with another man. In the mountains. The same elder man let out a small smile grace his features as he locked eyes with this interesting fellow. He had to praise this young man's sensory abilities that were probably almost on par with him, and that was saying something. Only her distant aunt had revealed this much talent. Mito Uzumaki. Though, it seems he didn't have enough training if I was able to check him out of that split of a second. It was all I needed. Though, there's probably no one who could hope to match me when it comes to sensors after all. It seems there's another massive type of chakra flowing through him, but it looks like it's being restrained by something and I couldn't get a read on it. Interesting. It seems, after almost 2 decades, I'll be able to finally meet a fellow Uzumaki. He cracked his neck, and finally standing up, popping a few bones here and there, a small breeze blew his dark red cloak that was enveloping his whole body. A kanji embedded on its back was the only thing visible before he vanished along with the winds that had picked up the pace. The same kanji read, Uzu no Arakuru, Raging Vortex. Few hours later. Raikage's training grounds. In the clearing, stood both a Yondaime Raikage, and Uzumaki Naruto, former Konoha's genin, now on the bingo book as in high A ranked with over 30 million ryos as a bounty with specific orders for capture on site and brought back to Konoha. When he discovered he has been placed on the bingo book, Naruto, in a rare show of emotions nowadays, had raised his killing intent to the point where the whole village felt it. Even the Raikage who had revealed this information to him had sweat running down his forehead, but few seconds later and after several deep breaths he calmed down and his brain started to working in overdrive at this new and unexpected development. To get someone on the bingo book, one needs to get the stamp directly from the Hokage, and that was the part he didn't understand. Why would Tsunade place him in the book with such high bounty just for capturing only? He knew him being the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, the stakes would be high, but something just didn't add up. Why would Tsunade do that? The tensions were high at the borders of Hai no Kuni, and if his toads were right, Konoha was on lockdown. No one apart from ninjas from that village could leave, and even then, they needed specific orders. This didn't go well on him, as he couldn't even get in contact with the few people he cared about in there. But right now he couldn't dwell more on it, as he faced one of his biggest challenges up until now, though none of them was going all out. Hidden in the shadows, a pair of purple eyes watched the battle in curiosity and expectation. From what he heard from the group that came with the Raikage and his fellow Uzumaki, this was some type of test, whereas the Raikage would propose him something, and if he was correct, he needed to make his move fast if he wished to complete his and his late wife's dream. For now, he would watch. Hajime, the busty blonde woman, named Samui, gave the signal of start before vanishing from between both months as they locked eyes with each other, analyzing and trying to explore any sign of weakness one another gave. Raiden no Yoroi, with a grunt, Raikage, who's known for having little patience, activated his armor where lightning exploded around his body and covering it, his speed, endurance and strength multiplying by many folds before he planted his foot on the ground, and in the next second he was upon Naruto, his elbow surrounded by lightning ready to knock him out, as he roared. Arubo. Naruto, who has been shaping his body all over this years, was able to follow, and he had to give it to the Raikage. The man was fast. He could probably replicate his jutsu, but he would need a few pointers, as it didn't sound easy to sustain such jutsu. He murmured something as he saw A upon him. Everything seemed to slow down in that moment, and Naruto immediately ducked, getting eyes widen in surprise from the Raikage. Futon Kekai. Kei's Dai Kiatsu. His right hand shimmered as a layer invisible to the eye was formed around his hand before sending a devastating strike on the Raikage's stomach that sent him a few meters backwards. The latter gave him an appraising nod, as he surely felt that. Futon. Senpuken. Even if I'm not even close to my maximum speed, he dodged that like it was child's play. He was even able to penetrate my armor. So much talent. But more lightning exploded from the Raikage's body, sparks danced even more widely around him, and just as he done before, he tried to get an hit in. Keyword tried, as for the next several seconds Naruto dodged and countered every single blow. The Raikage and everyone watching had their minds blown away, as they were in the presence of a young man matching with ease the technique and the speed that their Raikage was so famous for. The figure hidden in the shadows narrowed his eyes at every detail, and every second the blonde-haired dodged and countered and had to whistle at what he was doing. He's not matching Raikage's speed, in fact he's making him. You're slowing me down. It was a statement, but that simple statement made Naruto smirk and reply. Yes, I put up a barrier around me, whereas the atmosphere is extremely heavy. Anyone's body that comes in its field unconsciously feels the pressure and opens up a chain of reaction inside, as they are not ready or used to it, making that person to slow down at the sudden change for that split of a second, and the best of it all. The Raikage raised his eyebrow, as he was indeed impressed by the technique that overall was a good counter to his own, though he had his doubts that would be able to stop his full speed. I'm not affected by it. A look of shock passed through Raikage's facial expression, as he heard those words right from behind him before he was sent flying from a wind-laced foot near his spine. The figure that was in front of him shimmered out of existence, revealing it to be an after-image. I didn't explain that this jutsu requires a lot of concentration, and if there's just a simple slip, the pressure will disappear altogether, but they don't need to know that. Before Naruto could process his next move, his sensory abilities picked up the build-up on chakra. His body trembled a bit at the monstrous amount the person was giving off. He was almost matching a Biju. Don't need to fear me, boy. I'm not killing you, though. I'll be roughing you out a bit, so you can stop shaking like a chicken. Hearing those words, Naruto locked eyes with the unscathed form of Raikage. The shower of sparks dancing around his body was a sight to see. They looked like they could cut through anything. A smirk came over his features. I'm not shaking in fear, but in excitement. In that second his cheeks bulged as he made an hand seal, before exhaling a massive cloud of dust from his mouth. This action actually made his opponent smirk. Futon. Sunabakori. He's smart, he knows he can't match my speed, so he's limiting my vision. Thanks to his even more augmented reflexes, the Raikage was able to shift his body as an arm infused with chakra was thrusted upon where he was. He noticed that his opponent overextended it, probably because of overconfidence. There's the opening. The bulky man immediately grabbed the arm and lifted it. In a millisecond he was behind Naruto, turning him upside down, and with a strength that many could only wish for, he slammed the whole body on the ground. A large spider web crack, and huge cloud of dust and many sparks of electricity followed the impact, as he roared. Raiga Bomu. Naruto had his eyes widened in the whole process. He got overconfident that he would get an easy hit as he put up on a lot of chakra on that cloud of dust to blind the Raiden user, but it seems he underestimated the boost that comes with the Raiden no Yoroi. He braced for the impact as he called upon a chakra that he hasn't used since his training, as well as using his Doden chakra and making his skin slightly darker. Doden. Domu. *BOOOM. The Raikage had to wince slightly at the corrosive chakra when he was still on the process of slamming the Jinchuriki on the ground, but he wasn't a cage for nothing, and his training with his brother B helped to make his body adjust to that type of chakra before backflipping and waited for the results. The spectators had to hold their breaths at the deathly attack of their leader. Yugito and even Samui had a worried look, but before the latter could announce the winner, a maniacal laugh was heard from the small crater as a bloodthirsty voice reached their ears that sent many shivers to their spines. Interesting. I want more. Let's dance. Raikage. The dust vanished and everyone could see now a layer of red chakra enveloping the teenager, a second tail forming on his back. Naruto could feel the insane thirst for battles he has long since the end of his training resurface. That was one of the aspects that he gained during his 3 years while training. He lived for battles where you knew that the opponent was superior or was able to at least smash him. Naruto took a step forward before he completely vanished from the spot. He was already standing behind the Raikage, his arm raised. Time skip. It's been 2 weeks since Naruto and the Raikage fought, though no one really won as they had to stop, otherwise they would level the entire village. The former knew he still had space for improvement. He still remembered the elder toad, Fukasaku, informing him that his body was now developed enough to use one of their secret techniques. He felt giddy just thinking about the prospect to learn from a being with over 100 years of experience alone. Though, he couldn't dwell more on it as he arrived at a specific location, still in Kumogakure, at the mountains. He held an impassive face as he shifted his body and gazed over the meditated form of an older man that gave him some flashbacks of his Jiji, the Sandaime Hokage. Said old man opened his purple eyes, already sensing his soon-to-be pupil, waiting and hoping that he got the expected answer. Naruto didn't fail him as his icy blue eyes gave off a determination that the elder hasn't seen in many years. I accept. Flashback. It's been 3 days since his battle with the Raikage. He was already full health, much to the annoyance of the latter as he remembered the grumbling about damn Jinchurikis and their regeneration, and he was now strolling around some mountains looking for a good place to train and develop some new techniques before the meeting with the Raikage, who said that he wished to speak with him about the proposition he spoke about before all this had started. As Naruto was walking, he suddenly halted and narrowed his eyes to some random tree and with an even tone that matched his impassive face, spoke. Come on out, we are alone. There was a small breeze in front of him before, without any warnings, smoke or sound. An elder man with long, spiky white hair with some red streaks, appeared. Naruto could tell this man was strong, and the first thing he noticed was that although he was old, he portrayed this kind of wisdom that he only saw on one of his precious persons. The authority he executed was no laugh either. He could feel he would probably lose here, mainly because of his experience in the field that paled in comparison to this man. Though, he got an odd feeling as he felt his chakra, it was kinda similar. I see, you can even have a read of my chakra to that extent. I'm impressed. The older man spoke as if reading his thoughts, and that wasn't a easy thing as he had his famous poker face in place. Naruto pondered a bit as he detected no ill intent or negative emotions coming from the person in front of him. So, what do you want and why your chakra feels so familiar? The white-haired let out a chuckle before with a warm tone. You could even detect the passion the voice held at the few next words that would change Naruto's entire world. Oh, that's because our origins are the same. Naruto's breath hitched as realization hit him like a rock, and as he heard the man continuing just confirmed his thoughts. Yes, I'm an Uzumaki like you. I'm Gensai Uzumaki, known as the Uzu no Arakuru, son of Ashira Uzumaki, the Shodai Uzukage. In that instant, Naruto gathered some chakra on his wrist, and in a puff of smoke, a sword that made even the elder Uzumaki widened his eyes in shock, appeared, and the latter murmured, Kaminoikari. Follow that involuntarily statement, he let out a full grin not seen since his wife's death, and the next few words shocked Naruto to the very core as a voice full of determination matched his eyes that, literally, lit up on fire. Such was the hope that rejuvenated on his broken heart. Help me on getting Uzushiogakure to stand up to all other nations once again. Let's make everyone remember why we were so feared and that they should have confirmed that we were really dead. Come with me and I'll pass everything I know to you, you won't regret. Think about it, I'll give you 2 weeks, meet me at this place and I shall know your answer, my fellow Uzumaki. Time skip, still in the flashback. Been a few hours since the conversation with another one of his kin. It came as a shock to him to know there was another Uzumaki alive and one that could tell him what really happened on the fateful night. He didn't know what to think, it was just so many things to take in a span of a few minutes, though, the offer was really good. If he accepted, he would have a place for his precious people that he vowed to protect. There were too many pros to not accept. Right now, the main problem was in front of him. Raikage's office. Naruto instantly noticed the familiar faces of Yugito, Samui, Omoi, Karui, Darui and Killer Bee, who he befriended as soon as he entered the village, all standing besides the Raikage, who supported a serious look. As he settled himself in front of them, the latter started. Brat, you probably have already figured it out what I'm going to offer you, but, as a Raikage I still need to make the official request. So, Uzumaki Naruto, do you accept joining Kumogakure as an active shinobi, swearing loyalty upon your new home, in case you accept, and protect it with all costs, even with your own life? There was many hopeful looks from the people who were present at the room, but they all got surprised and shocked when the young man in front of them bluntly said, No. But, what do you mean, no? Do you want to live the rest of your life as a missing nin? Huh. Everyone, including the Raikage, was surprised by this reaction, mainly because it came from Yugito, who saw red after the negative answer. Nevertheless, the Yondaime let out a chuckle, surprising even Naruto. I guess that means you accepted the other offer. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki narrowed his eyes slightly before it turned back to the impassive one as he hummed in thought before opening his mouth to speak. Hi. That means he came to speak with you. But as I was saying before, Yugi-chan interrupted me. Yugito let out an huff in annoyance, though, she was still listening and curious who was the man that stole his man. My man. Ah. Nibi is already influencing me. Ohaho. Don't say that, kitten, that was all you. Though, I'm impressed as you found quite a specimen. I would like to propose an alliance as soon as we establish ourselves in our new home. Gensai-sama told me that for the last decade he's been training with a few old friends, the new generation in the village, in secret. Unfortunately, there's no Uzumakis besides the two of us, but that doesn't mean that they don't possess an extraordinary potential. I guess he was just waiting for the right piece of the puzzle to announce the return of Uzushiogakure. Raikage, though, preferred muscles over brains, he wasn't dumb enough to the point where he would reject such offer. He heard many stories about the legendary village that was Uzushiogakure and her shinobis. They were in possession of a lot of rare minerals, and the fact that they had, literally, a sea around the village, not speaking of their barriers that wouldn't let some foreigner enter, there were a lot of pros. I guess you'll be the Yondaime Uzukage for you to propose such alliance with one of the 5 great nations no less. Naruto thought over if he should tell him the truth or not, but since he could detect the emotions rolling of the man, he decided to not lie. No, I'll be getting trained by Gensai-sama who will be the Yondaime. I'll told him already I had no interest of being a Kage. That dream was lost a long time ago. I'll probably be like his right-hand man and the ambassador in case this alliance goes forward. Raikage hummed in thought, a hand on his chin stroking his beard as his mind raced through the implications that this would bring. He had no illusions. As soon as the other villages get the knowledge of the famous Uzushiogakir's return, there will be a lot of blood and secrets that thought dead coming to the surface if the man named Gensai, who spoke to him about Naruto, told him the truth. He had seen the hatred still rolling on that man's eyes despite being an old man. He guessed it was because of the massacre that his family suffered. But there was a specific village that he held even more hatred than the others. Konoha. If the man told him the truth, then Konoha would be the talk in the town for many years. Or maybe there will be a bloodbath reminiscing the clan wars era, and with Uzumaki Naruto by his side, the Raikage seriously doubted the chances of the Leaf Village. But there was still many unknowns in the world. Like Kiri, Suna, the small countries. Akatsuki. Hey, this will be fun. I've been hitching to put some tree huggers in their place. As the Raikage of Kumogakure no Sato, I accept your proposition, though, we still need to have a meeting with the daimyo of Kaminari no Kuni. But I don't think there will be any problems. Naruto smiled for the first time since the meeting. Everyone there was shocked at the turn of events. Yugito calmed down as she heard the entire conversation and couldn't help to let out a smile as well at the prospect of seeing the man that captivated his heart soon enough. Maybe she could settle down in Uzushio. That would be interesting. Maybe when this all is over. I'm so proud of you, my little kitten. You should just get over with it and jump on him before he leaves the village, so you can get full of. It's been roughly 2 months since the rescue of the Kage. Things got out of hand. A group consisted of Yuhi Kurenai, Azuki Yugao, Hana Inuzuka, Sum Inuzuka, Shizune Kato, Mitarashi Anko, Hitaki Kakashi and the Ichiraku family were worried. The village was on lockdown. Since the news of the whereabouts of Uzumaki Naruto had gotten out, both civilians and shinobis alike were tense. The placement of said person in their bingo book didn't help the matters. The power he had shown during what was their mission that would result, hopefully, on the improvement in the relationship between both Sunagakure and Konohagakure was something that certainly left their minds boggling. It was something neither of them thought possible. The dead last. The Dobi of the new generation. The outcast. Of course no one predicted that this person would be the future wielder of the famous Mokuden, something that their precious Shodai Hokage was so famous for, and that was not counting the prowess and the talent/potential without it. Everyone knew that he was now unreachable, at least not without a fight. Back to the group, they were shocked since the news of their, secretly, precious blonde-haired was placed in Konoha's bingo book, and his high bounty was something that left them really confused with their Hokage. No one knew what was happening with Tsunade. They couldn't forget the day Shizune called for an urgent meeting with the group. Apparently, Tsunade's mind snapped after so much pressure from the council, the elders and some clan heads, and with the topic of one Uzumaki Naruto returning, was the last straw. But some, mainly Hitaki Kakashi, Shizune, the former being a very smart person and the latter for living with her master for many years, and unknowingly Nara Shikamaru and his father, knew something was wrong, very wrong. They knew something was up. Since the banish of Naruto, she overcame the demands and the progressive power abusing of the civilian council and started ruling Konoha with an iron fist. Even with the strained alliance with Suna, the many losses of alliances, no one could complain about the many hard decisions she made. They were proud of Senju Tsunade being their Kage. But, suddenly, Just after the reports from the Cage's mission had gotten out, everything turned upside down. Many ANBUs, Junins and Chunins being sent to the borders, the decreasing year of the graduations, and finally the placement of Naruto in the bingo book. The group shared their opinion in the matter and they finally came to the most probable reasoner, in this case, person, behind all of this. Jiraiya. As soon as Shizune recounted what happened between the Gamma Sennin and Naruto, they instantly knew he was the culprit or the man who was somehow plotting behind the scenes. But then, another person that Kakashi suggested, and Sume plainly agreed, came to the conversation. Danzo. It was no news, at least for the older generation, that this man was dark. His title as Shinobi no Yami was enough for that matter. They knew he wanted the Hokage's title since the Sandaim's rule. He had tried many times to get Uzumaki Naruto under his thumb but never got his wishes. But the main question was, how? A person can't just change his personality so drastically. Mainly Senju Tsunade, a woman renowned for her independence in many topics. A woman who became the world's strongest kunoichi. How was she being manipulated? Shikamaru, who had the highest IQ from Hai no Kuni, couldn't decipher this puzzle. Not without all the pieces. Not without knowing the darkest secrets of Konoha. Such as the Uchiha's massacre. Or the man known as Shinobi no Yami. Meanwhile, the group knew they had to leave Konoha as soon as possible, but with all of this changes they couldn't. A village being on lockdown meant that they needed a direct and specific mission from the Hokage, otherwise they would be followed, instantly. They weren't about to underestimate the effectiveness of Jiraiya's spy network. And they didn't want to put Naruto in, even more, danger. Route. Headquarters. Danzo smiled. The reports he had received from his latest servant was something that made him let out a rare emotion. No, his troops were doing amazingly fine. No Konoha shinobis thought about to ask what really changed. He was aware that Shizune Kato, the apprentice of his new servant, was a flight risk that would, eventually, notice something wrong. He had to put an end to that. He wouldn't mess things up after coming so far. Fu. A shadow emerged from the corner and knelt in front of his commander, Danzo, waiting for his orders. Take this scroll to our little puppet. After a short, "Hi, Danzo-sama," the figure vanished a second later to accomplish his mission. The route commander was about to start reviewing some other secret files but stopped and shifted his eyes to the corner of his office. "What can I do for you, Jiraiya?" A grunt of what he could figure as disappointment met his ears before one of the three Sannin jumped out of the shadows and lined up to a wall, his arms crossed over his chest as he met the gaze of his sensei's former teammate. "Do you think it's wise to let them leave the village?" Danzo didn't blink, though his eyes hardened a bit at the question. "Don't assume I'm like my fool of teammate Hiruzen. I'll have 3 squads of my Anbu following them in the shadows." Here, his eyes darkened dramatically. "And as soon as they complete the mission, they will be killed on the spot." Jiraiya hummed in thought at the implications. He still thought it was going to be a huge mistake letting this particular group leave the village. Someone like Hitaki Kakashi shouldn't be underestimated, and his motto of, "A shinobi must see the underneath of underneath," could cost them a lot. He didn't know how right he was. Also, his skills went up a notch. He remembered catching a glimpse of his training during the last few years and even left him, a Sannin, baffled. On top of that, Shizune, Kurenai and Hana were going to be part of his team. Even if Danzo had, somewhat, tried to perfectly balance that team with a ninjutsu, taijutsu tracking, genjutsu and Iryo nin specialists to avoid suspicions, he couldn't help but have this nasty feeling that something in this particular mission was about to go wrong and somehow leave a bad taste in their mouth. The last few years for Jiraiya have been incredible hard, until recently. His teammate, Tsunade, gave him such a beating that left him in coma for almost a month. He still has many marks all over his body as a proof. As soon as he woke up, Tsunade had him, unofficially and secretly, banished. If the other countries caught this type of information, they would have been, most likely, invaded. With his banishment, he dedicated himself to his spy network and provide important information to Danzo. He had tried to locate one Uzumaki Naruto but never caught an hair of him during the almost 3 years. And of course last, but not least, his research. When he heard the news about his return, in the Cage's rescue, he fumed at the vast improvement of the blonde's skill. The brat even unlocked Mokuden. Neither Minato-kun nor Kushina came from the Senju clan, so how could that happen? Keep in mind that they think Mokuden is actually a Kekkei Genkei. There are no proofs that it is or that it isn't, but they just chalked it up to a bloodline that somehow skips 1 or 2 generations since Tsunade didn't unlock it. He had tried to reach Sunagakur in time to bring his former part-time apprentice back to Konoha, but he hadn't been successful. The next was the confrontation between Naruto and Orochimaru. Rumors were that he gave the hubby Sannin quite a beating, though, in his mind, he didn't believe any of that. He couldn't have surpassed the famous Sannin in 3 years, right? He was snapped out of his thoughts as he heard the person in front of him, speaking. You'll follow them as a precaution and help my route on accomplishing their mission. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. He could probably take the 4 of them at once, even though he didn't know how much Kakashi had grown. But he wasn't a Sannin for nothing, even if he's already past his prime. Dealt with the first problem, Jiraiya hardened his gaze, a rare serious tone slipping out of his mouth. A problem has come up. There has been some rumors circulating around the elemental nations about Uzushiogakure. Danzo's eyes widened in shock at that, but Jiraiya's next words turned into fear. Somehow, they have rebuilt the entire village under everyone's nose. The elder tried to process the words, but his mind was practically blank. He wasn't expecting this. A creep smile emerged on his lips, after a few seconds, as he murmured. Such a gold mine can't go to waste. I'll make some plans so they can, at least, be useful again. A week later, Uzushiogakure no Sato, borders. A tall, well-built young man, ice blue eyes and spiky, blonde hair with jaw-length bangs framing either side of his handsome face, though, the same face supported a murderous scowl. His fingers were twitching, while he ran at full speed on top of the violent ocean that surrounded his new home, wanting nothing more to grab the hilt of his legendary sword placed securely on his waist. The glimmering silver of Kusanagi no Tsurugi waiting to spill some blood. Gairusupai, his spy toad, had just reported him troubling news about a mission given, a week ago, to a certain group of people. At first, he was excited that the opportunity had finally arrived as 3 of the supposed members that would join him in the long run were leaving the village, but then fear crept his spine as he heard that they were being followed by unknown Anbu and one Sannin, Jiraiya. His high intelligence immediately put 2 plus 2 together and came to the real meaning for this mission. Shizune, a woman who rarely went out on missions, at least, without Tsunade, was a dead giveaway. He also knew that his former sensei, Kakashi, could probably come to the same conclusion, but he didn't know his motives or on what side he was on. Naruto had just been given the clearance that he could leave the village. His master and father figure, Uzumaki Gensai, the Yondaime Uzukage, didn't think twice and immediately let him go, knowing already what his pupil had planned during the last few years. Been almost a month and a half since he joined the elder Uzumaki in his ancestors' home. Naruto had trained relentlessly, and true to his origins, he developed his own style in the arts of Fuinjutsu, improved his kenjutsu, whereas he developed the art of maneuvering 2 swords at once, making use of the Kaminoikari and Kusanagi at once. Though, he grew leaps and bounds on futon manipulation, taking it into another level. Like Enten, that is the highest Kaden level one can achieve, futon has one as well. One that not even the Shodai Kage could properly control. Taiden, the typhoon release. A puff of smoke on top of his right shoulder broke Naruto out of his thoughts, though, if he was surprised, he didn't show. He didn't even acknowledge the toad's presence as he kept running towards Kawa no Kuni, the land of rivers. Naruto-sama, you need to hurry up. Kakashi is stalling off Jiraiya so Kurenai and the others could get away, but the Anbu caught up to them real fast and are currently fighting them. The sheer numbers of them will eventually be too much and they will eventually exhaust themselves. The scowl darkened at the statement, his eyes started to produce lightning sparks at the amount of hatred rolling off inside of his body. No time to waste. A single natural lightning shoot out from the sky straight to his body, as Naruto clapped his hands, and as soon as it hit him, his whole body, mean cells, started to work in overdrive. Let it be said that a bolt of lightning contains 5 billion joules of energy, but Naruto, who completely mastered the lightning's nature, could turn it into like a Red Bull energy drink. His Uzumaki cells, which gave him a natural high physical and regeneration prowess, and the Biju sealed in him, helped in the matters. If it was a normal person, he would be, instantly, cremated. But he wasn't normal. Kaminari no Nagale, thunder flow. And he vanished in a thunder clap. A few miles away. True to Jiraiya's fears, Kakashi had been worried since the mission had started. While following them, he heard him speaking to the members of the squad, Kurenai, Shizune and Hana multiple times, discreetly. He wasn't able to hear the conversation due to if he got any closer, Kakashi was bound to notice his presence by the smell or other means. It didn't take long for them to complete the mission, which was a proposition for an alliance with Kawa no Kuni. The daimyo had immediately refused it as soon as he read the first paragraphs of the scroll stamped by the Hokage. Such one-sided agreement was unconceived. And just as they left the small country, they were immediately surrounded by unknown Anbu, with blank masks. But Kakashi knew better. And it was at that moment that he knew the real meaning for this mission as he glanced over Shizune. They want to kill two birds with one stone. But now there's no doubt that Tsunade is somehow being manipulated. Just as he finished that stray of thoughts, another man, now known to the four of them, appeared, and that person made Kakashi curse as this just to another notch, and he knew that their chances of surviving were now minimal at best. With a plan effectively made in less than 5 seconds, he went with it. He would, at least, protect this team no matter what, knowing what they meant to his precious former student. 15 minutes later. It's said that shinobi battles are quick. Sometimes it doesn't take more than 5 minutes to finish one. But when ninjas of high caliber fight, it sometimes can go on the other way around. Just like the whole battlefield that was once a beautiful clearing, it changed. The ground, trees and even some random small buildings were completely destroyed or scorched to the very core. Two battles happening with some distance between each other, but, nevertheless, not less destructive. An exhausted Kakashi was kneeling on the ground taking deep breaths, gazing over the cocky man, some meters away, in front of him. He, too, was bruised as blood covered some parts of his body and busty lips that made him grimace every time he tried to make some arrogant remarks. But he knew he had lost. The man was just better than him, as he could nullify the Sharingan from the many battles he had in the past. He watched as Jiraiya leapt in his direction, cracking the ground he stood in the process. A compressed ball of pure chakra materialized on his right hand. The white-haired geezer roared as he thrusted his arm forward. It's over. Rasengan. Kakashi's world seemed to slow down. He doubted it was his Sharingan's doing. Many faces flashed in his mind, but only a few made him almost shed a tear at the death's door. Reikiri. Asterisk boom. The sound of thousands birds chipping and the murmured technique broke him out of his reminiscing. A look of shock flashed on his eyes for a second, and a certain flashback almost made him chuckle, if not for the situation, before he was sent backwards from the clashing of both jutsus. Kakashi tilted his head upwards to see his long-lost student in all his glory, wearing his traditional black armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit, numerous plates constructing this armor, reminiscent of the clan's war era. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore 2 bands on each armor. White bandages wrapped around his ankles, followed by black sandals. What made his eyes widen was the sword resting on his waist. He heard bits of rumors about the clash between Orochimaru and Naruto, but, even to him, sounded a bit far-fetched. The Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Naruto looked over his shoulder to see the broken form of his former teacher before returning his gaze to the man in front of him. Murderous ice blue eyes met black eyes, the latter having an emotion of disbelief crossing his face. Sorry, I'm late. Jiraiya, who quickly composed himself, smirked at the prospect of getting a bonus out of this mission. You finally came out of hiding, brat. It's time to come back home. Naruto ignored Jiraiya, though, his eyes darkened a bit, before looking over his shoulder, again. Go help the rest. I'll take care of him. The commanding tone of his voice sent chills down their bodies. Kakashi only replied with a nod before vanishing towards his team's location. Naruto, who had his eyes on Jiraiya, again, pointed a single finger towards him. Lightning sparks materialized on the tip of his indicator. Prepare yourself. Raiden. Byakurai. Zwap. A single lightning current shoot out of his fingertip. It missed Jiraiya's face for a few centimeters before it completely pierced 3 scorched threes behind the man who had his eyes widened in shock. T2F fast. I didn't even see it. And the power it held would undoubtedly kill me. This time, it will be different. Jiraiya's eyes would have popped out of shock, as he heard the voice behind his ears, if not for a single overpowered kick on his back that sent him many meters forward. The Sannin used the momentum and flipped to balance his body to land correctly on the ground. He locked eyes with his pupil Sun, trying to analyze what was happening. Pure speed, pure strength. What the hell? His chest bulged, as he went through some hand seals before he let loose a massive stream of flames from his mouth. He had to gain some time to come up with a plan. This Naruto was different from the one he knew. This one wasn't brash or the loudmouth he came to know. He held the eyes of whom has seen death before his very eyes. The eyes of a true shinobi. The very same eyes of the only man he has always feared. Sanshou no Hanzo. Kaden. Karyudan. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the technique. His mind instantly clicked on what this traitor was trying to do. But he wouldn't give none of that. Instead, he was grateful that he could finally try it in a real battle. His hands formed a single hand seal while inhaling a good amount of air. The massive accumulated amount of chakra was not missed by Jiraiya. Naruto opened his mouth, breathing a huge gust of wind. A tornado immediately took shape before it clashed with the stream of fire. A look of surprise and fear crossed Jiraiya's face as the tornado actually sent the fire stream backwards with the double amount of power, heat and speed. In contrast, Naruto was amused and marveled at the technique he developed. Taiden. Sumuji Otoshi, Typhoon Release, Tornado Drop. Jiraiya immediately jumped out of the way, cursing his raging emotions, but the look of fear that wasn't lost on his face turned even more prominent as he saw Naruto moving his right hand towards him, and not a second later, the tornado followed the physical and untold command without any restraints. He's controlling it. The Sannin went through a few hand seals, pushing a bit more chakra than the necessary before slamming his palms on the ground. A tall and thick wall of earth emerged from the ground, right in front of him. There was a booming sound as the ruthless typhoon clashed against the wall. Jiraiya couldn't believe at the amount of chakra he wasted so the wall wouldn't collapse like it was nothing. Doden. Doryuheki. He missed his enemy's smirk and the sound of clapping hands, fingers intertwined. Fool. Mokuden. Unagi. Wood release. Tree columns. Wood beams erupted from the ground, reaching high into the sky. Not a second later it sprouted and turned back down towards Jiraiya, who had his vision blocked by the wall. Jiraiya widened his eyes as he finally took notice of the 100 beams coming from his blind spot. He cursed himself as he realized his enemy's plan and for underestimating the brat who he had, up until now, see him as nothing but a nuisance and the loudmouth from the time they met. It's time to get serious. A clone materialized on his side, both already going through some hand seals. Their chest noticeable bulged as the wood came close to him. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kaden. Enmaku Reppu. Fire release. Flame screen gale. An huge flaming tornado came out of their mouths. It clashed against the wood beams and it didn't take too much time before it burned everything on its way. The sheer heat of that technique was felt by Naruto, who stopped his own jutsu after seeing that was useless trying to overcome those flames. It seems someone has been creating new techniques as well. Not bad. A grin, no, a maniacal grin was now splitting his face. His blood was starting to pump at the chance of a good battle as he saw, although with some surprise, Jiraiya's pose, his hands glowing and some features of his face already changing. Ooh, it seems he can still use that mode even after the summons break up the contract with him. Naruto could already feel the pressure in the atmosphere changing, foreign chakra sipping and flowing through Jiraiya's chakra coils. Red lines and toad features now more prominent and visible on his face. Brat, the playtime is over. I'll teach you a bit of humility and just then I'll bring you back. Naruto couldn't hide his glee anymore. He made a single hand seal and with a grunt, an invisible force sent the dust and everything around him away. The pressure around the area was almost unbearable as Naruto's chakra spiked dramatically and his muscles tensed. Kai. Seals all over his body blinked a few times, which didn't go unnoticed by Jiraiya, who had now his eyes narrowed, before it disappeared. He was wearing seals. And if what I saw was indeed correct, there was weight seals as well as chakra suppressions in the mist. His now enhanced sensory ability took a glimpse of Naruto's chakra and instantly his body shivered involuntarily at the amount he could feel. Nevertheless, he raised an eyebrow as 4 wood clones materialized out of the original body before vanishing towards a specific location. He could sense the 4 of them were standing in a square formation, and before he knew it, a large barrier erupted around them. The red color of it made him nod approvingly, as he was considered by many, in Konoha, a seal master, and even him wasn't able to use such high level of Kekai Fuinjutsu. Needless to say, he was astounded that Naruto was able not just for using Fuinjutsu but that he could use at such level with just clones. Shisekyojin. He was broken out of his awe as he heard his opponent speak. Hope you can follow my steps. Jiraiya's eyes widened at the speed, his body shifted to the side almost involuntarily, his Senin Moto boosted his reaction and senses to the limit, but he was impressed nevertheless. He brought his arm up as Naruto thrust his fist on Jiraiya's direction and the latter had to grunt at the strength behind it. But not a second later, his arms were a blur as he was forced on defensive as a series of punches and kicks tried to overcome his guard. Dynamiku Akushian. Jiraiya knew if he didn't break the rhythm of his actions, he would be overwhelmed. Hisb pure strength was leaving his arms numb. As he avoided another fist, he stomped the ground with such force that it cracked all around him. It made Naruto lose his balance, giving Jiraiya the opportunity he was waiting for, as he needed Senjutsu and Kaden chakra on his lungs, his mouth cavity already filled with oil. Jiminwari. Earth Splitter. Jiraiya let loose the oil and at the same time it ignited, creating a massive flame point-blank range at Naruto, who had his eyes widened for a second at the fast and well-executed techniques. Kaden. Dianden. Naruto didn't hesitate and immediately brought his arms in front of him, his fingers a blur of movement as he literally painted many seals with the use of his chakra on thin air, in less than a second. Just as the huge flame was about to engulf him, chakra-like vapor covered the flames, although with some strain, but effectively making it disappear as a blue kanji. That red fire suppression glowed in front of Naruto's hands. Jiraiya had his eyes widened at the ability he only heard tales of, the special ability of Mito Uzumaki. Fuka Hoin. What? Jiraiya's face was one of disbelief. Never in million years he thought he would see such ability. His pride as a seal master didn't believe he just saw this brat use it with such finesse as if it was a walk in the park. Pathetic. Letting your guard down for even a second while dancing. Fuka Hoin. Kai. The still glowing blue kanji let loose the flames it just sealed as Naruto formed a single hand seal, his cheeks bulging noticeably. Futon. Kami Orochi. Jiraiya, who was a few meters away after witnessing such prowess with Fuinjutsu, had his jaws on the ground. The sheer size of the flaming vortex, that would make even Madara proud, was something he wasn't expecting. Well, he wasn't expecting Naruto using his own jutsu against him. He never knew Fuka Hoin could be used like that, but he guessed it was because he needed a scroll and Naruto didn't. Senpo. Jiraiya steeled his gaze. He went through many hand seals, needing a good chunk of his senjutsu chakra to his lunge before expelling a large amount of water from his mouth. It took shape of a dragon instantly as it roared to the skies before it lunged towards the vortex. Sweden. Sushu Gorugan. Another booming sound as both techniques clashed against each other before a large amount of steam emerged from the clashing, engulfing the whole area inside the barrier in a thick mist. It's over. Naruto used the insane amount of molecules around the area to cloak himself. The water vapor bended the light around him, erasing his presence, even to his opponent's enhanced sensories. Mujin Maisai, vapor cloak. On the other side, Jiraiya narrowed his eyes at the sudden disappearance of the chakra signature. Maybe the brat had used this chance to escape, he mused to himself, but dismissed that thought in a second as he still could see bits of the red color that was the barrier still standing. He was broken out of his thoughts as multiple slashes, in an interval of a millisecond, met his body and then. Pain. Kusanagi no Ken. Setsuna Doku. The voice behind him and the murmured technique left his eyes widened in shock despite the pain that he was feeling. Shit. Kusanagi is filled with poison. And just as finished that train of thoughts, his body turned numb, poison started to flow through the multiple cuts his body suffered in the previous technique. If it wasn't for his enhanced boost and durability that the Sage move gave him, he would be undoubtedly dead. He took notice of the barrier dispersing itself as the mist followed. Not a second later, he gazed over the figure still maintaining a safe distance, in front of him. He smirked, as he wasn't a Sannin for nothing. He used his remaining strength, kneading chakra on his right palm before slamming it on a scroll that he had borrowed from the toads. Even though it was a one-time use, he knew it was the right time. A plume of smoke engulfed his body to reappear at the location he had chosen in case he had to use it, not before snarling at the brat for giving him such a beating and humiliation. This is not over, remember that. Yuku Kuchios. Jiraiya missed the smirk that came over Naruto's features. He didn't even thought for a second why he had missed the chance to finish him off and just chalked it up to him being cocky, but that was all well. Naruto knew that the former Gamma Sennin had a few aces upon his sleeve, at least to escape. He was a renowned man for spying and escaping, so it was of no surprise that Naruto saw him use a scroll that he had immediately identified as a reversal technique from the seals visible to the eye. He had telepathic ordered one of the wood clones that was holding the barrier to turn itself into a seed and plant itself on Jiraiya. He would use this to make contact with the remaining people inside of the village. At first he had his mind focused on killing the nuisance that was Jiraiya, but then he remembered that he couldn't make direct contact with the persons he cared about that were still residing in Konoha. So, although he didn't hold back in beating the pervert, he still wanted for the Sannin to escape without any suspicions. His Soshinki, signal seeds, that was mainly used for tracking his enemies, would be the key to get everyone out of that hellhole. His personal plan was finally starting. Naruto's sensors detected the group he had saved a few kilometers away. They had already finished their battle a few minutes ago. He knew that Kakashi, even if exhausted, would be too much for the squad that had followed them. He took a few deep breaths as his chakra started to replenish on his own before heading towards where he felt them resting. He had a faraway look while running. The letter has probably reached them by now. It's time for the wake-up call, and for the world to know Uzushio's return is not just some laughable rumor. Naruto didn't even notice the woefully quiet beast inside of him. Kyubi, who has been watching everything playing, could only sigh at the state of the world. He knew what was coming, and the battles ahead of his host wouldn't be any less dangerous where every single second mattered. The news of a rising village that had already his history written in the shinobi books for their fame and prowess over many shinobi arts was a dangerous topic for the high-class ninjas all over the world. There was no doubt that many people would try to explore and use it for their own goals and greed, not to say there was still Akatsuki lurking around. Their mission of gathering the bijus was something that bothered him greatly. There was only one goal and result he could think of if they were sealing all of his kin into one object, and that was something that even he, the Kyuubi, feared if they succeeded. I guess it's time, Hagoromo Jiji. He's ready. Seriously, how the Kyuubi, or for that matter, the bijus, don't know the result of all of them being sealed into the Jubi's crust, statue whatever it is beyond me. Though there's many loopholes as the history goes on, we all love it the same at the end of the day, right? Kumogakure no Sato. Raikage's office. In the Raikage's office, the tall and muscled man gazed over the letter for what seems to be the 100th time, reading every detail of it. This was huge, he didn't know that they were already so far up ahead. He would have thought it would take a few years for this to happen. He had already discussed the topic of the letter with his now trusty council and everyone had agreed to what was being proposed in the scroll. A had no doubts that if the old council hadn't been dealt with after the revelation of some secret information when Uzushiyogakure's destruction that even he didn't know about and the mission given to Yugito recently, there would be a pandemonium but, at least, they were all in hell. The greedy bastards were easily on par with Konoha. The bulky man was very surprised when, at the time of Naruto's departure, Uzumaki Gensai had proposed him a partnership between Kumogakure and Uzushiogakure. He had asked the million Ryo's question, why? Although Gensai showed the hatred he felt towards all the great nations except for Suna, he had explained him that during the years he lived nearby Kumogakure that he started to lose the grudge he had against them. After discovering the council's plan behind the weak-willed but powerhouse Nadaime Raikage, he knew it was a matter of time before he let loose the pure hatred towards Kumo. During the many years after his disappearance he had watched from afar, how Kumo grew up from a greedy village to a humble and respectful one. The Jinchuriki's treatment helped in the matter, albeit the Nibi's host was only after some time and even then, some of the old generation hated her with passion. And now, the scroll he held in his hands. His answer, no, Kaminari no Kuni and Kumogakure's answer would mark a very important and historic moment in the elemental nations. His eyes landed on the title as he read it again. Proposition for Alliance. Riboryushanzu. The Revolutioners. Whoever named it has a bad taste. Hehe. Haru no Kuni. A letter with the same content was being read by none other than Koyuki Kazuhana. Her eyes were widened in disbelief as a hopeful look came over them as she read the name who signed the letter. Uzumaki Gensai, Yondaime Uzukage. But a single note under it left her paralyzed emotionally, no words came out of her mouth. P.S. The Haru no Kuni's hero has been dying to talk with a certain princess. After what seemed to be hours just standing there trying to process the words she just read, a blush crept on her face at the idea of finally being with the man that gave her hope again and helped her in getting her country back. Nami no Kuni. The sound of a bottle breaking on the floor could be heard inside a modest house. Footsteps of someone running towards the man who let the bottle fall could be heard, followed by a female concerned voice. Father. What happened? Her father, Tazuna, was pale as if he just saw a ghost. She took notice of the letter that was on the table and immediately read it in a span of a minute. And just as she ended reading it, she too, was left in shock, specifically at the notes written in the end. P.S. Nami's hero hopes to meet you again in the near future as he's our ambassador. He said that he missed a drunk geezer, a beautiful woman, and wants to see how much the kid had grown over the years, whatever that meant. Needless to say, there was many curses about, damn brats, and a blushing mess that was Tsunami after reading the beautiful woman part. Though, there was one thing that both were thinking in common. He's back. The former, who had heard tales of Uzushiogakure from his father and how Nami was protected by the same village when they were still standing, couldn't help but shed a tear as a particular memory, or more specifically, a dream of his father hit him. I hope one day that Uzushiogakure returns to his former glory. We were like brother and sister back then. It's really sad that a village full of energy got destroyed, but I know that one day they will be back. And it will be up to you to support them when the time comes. Make me proud, son. Dad. It's finally happening. Sunagakure no Sato. Kage's office. Gaara had a small smile on his lips as he read the contents of the scroll. His brother and sister, Kankuro and Tamari, were on his side reading it over his shoulder. Both with shocked and surprised looks, but not Gaara. Oh no, he knew this was coming, well, not Uzushiogakure in particular. A surprising move that not even he could have guessed in million years, now that he knew. Uzumaki Naruto, you never cease to amaze me. Tamari, get me the faster bird messenger we have available at the moment. The monotone voice of her brother broke Tamari out of her thoughts. She could only nod in agreement before she vanished from the office. Kankuro, who was still at Gaara's side, couldn't help but open his mouth to add his cent. Man, that kid has style. In the end of the letter, both of them read out loud the note written by Uzumaki Gensai. P.S. Hope with this alliance we can finally reunite the 9 with his longtime friend and kin, 1, and his brother and sister again. Indeed, he has. 2 days later, Uzushiogakure no Sato. In the top of the Uzukage's tower stood the same Uzukage, Uzumaki Gensai gazing over his people. Everyone was standing proud and looking up to their Kage who had reunited them once again all those years ago. The fire in their hearts now burned brightly once again after it had been extinguished long time ago. The Uzukage had been waiting for his apprentice to arrive, but it seemed that he would miss the show. Naruto had told him to take the announcement even if he wasn't present, but as one of his chunin gave him the signal to start, in the corner of his purple eyes, on top of a building, there he stood, arms crossed over his chest with an impassive face, though, you couldn't miss the small smile on his lips and the proud look that he was trying but failing to hide, Uzumaki Naruto. Behind him, stood what he could now deduce, Hitaki Kakashi, Yuhi Kurenai, Inuzuka Hana and Kato Shizune. It seems his mission was a success. He broke the eye's contact with Naruto, as he needed chakra into his lungs before a booming voice was heard all over the village. As of now, we, Uzushiogakure, after so many hardships and sacrifices, is finally and officially back. Let's show the world why they should have confirmed that we were indeed dead, let's give them hell. In unison, every single human that was present noticed the emotions running through the speech. Their blood pumped and the adrenaline coursing through their veins made everyone shout as the power of those thousands voices shook the entire village. The former Konoha nins were left in shock at the scene in front of them, and neither of them missed Naruto's fist shaking in what they could tell, excitement. Uzushiogakure has returned. News of it has spread like wildfire. Not surprisingly, it took everyone by surprise as none of the other nations' spy network had hinted for their possible return. Yes, there were rumors, but they seemed far-fetched as the only proof was the sight of some movements between Nami no Kuni and Uzu no Kuni, but that was all. Every single spy they had sent to retrieve some or any type of information, eventually, met a dead end as no one was capable of overcome the wild whirlpools which, they noted, was way more aggressive. Konohagakure no Sato. Council chambers. Silence filled the room. Both civilian and shinobi sides were thinking about the confirmation of some inconceivable rumors they have been hearing for a while. They didn't think it was worth the trouble as, by now, everyone knew about the fate of Uzushiogakure during the Dainiji Ninkai Taisen, Second Shinobi World War. What many didn't know, was that Konoha had a big hand, in their destruction. Tsunade, who portrayed a stoic face during Danzo's explanation, was the first to address the council. The civilian side were, by now, used to the new Tsunade. A veteran kunoichi, who, since long, had snapped and didn't care about anyone's opinion. Everything she said was an order and whoever went against it was executed. Plain and simple. The shinobi side, however, was a different matter. Each clan head had their own thoughts. Some saw it as the logical way to guide Konoha to a higher level, like Shibi Aburame. Others could see underneath the underneath and, somehow, They knew their cage was being manipulated by someone. Nara Shikaku and his son had many sleepless nights trying to solve this enigma, but it was just frustrating that they didn't have all the pieces on the board to solve it. But their suspicions were towards the shinobi no Yami. The fact that Tsunade had his root reinstated was the key factor to their suspicions. It's been almost 2 weeks since Kakashi, Kurenai, Hana and Shizune went on a mission and were yet to arrive. This was troubling, and Sume, who was known for her impatience, had a limit, but still, they had to give it to her for keeping a leveled head. Though, Shikaku, more than Shikamaru, thought there was more into it. The Nara head had this feeling she was hiding something. But it was just too troublesome to ask. And so, I'm sending a team to travel to Uzushiogakure and open negotiations for an alliance with them. They were our cousins before their destruction, and I hope we can have our long-lost allies back and help each other in this time of need. Shikaku narrowed his eyes hearing this bit of information. He wasn't a fool. His mind had already put some pieces together and knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Why, you ask? Because they didn't ask their so-called cousins to help them rebuild the village. Which got him into thinking, why haven't they, or whoever was leading their construction, asked for Konoha's help in the matter? The Uzumakis were a bunch of goofballs. They have always put their family first, and their alliance, due to the marriage between Senju Hashirama and Uzumaki Mito, was something that they held in high regards. Maybe it was because Konoha had went against their own views and was now a shell of her former self. Or it could be because they were tight in financial terms following the loss of the majority of their allies just a month later after the banishment of. At that moment, Shikaku's eyes widened in shock. Naruto. Uzumaki. The Uzumaki clan were insanely loyal to their respective village, but that immediately came into an halt when it came to their own family and ideology. One of their own being banished by their supposed allies or cousins would be practically treason or betrayal, and one thing that they didn't stand was being betrayed. One would want an Uzumaki as their ally, but if someone went against their views it would be catastrophic, and to add more fuel to the fire. They had banished the son of the heiress, their rightful heir. It didn't take long for Shikaku to put everything together. This wasn't a trip for a supposed alliance, this was a trap. Whoever was working behind the scenes wanted something from Uzushiogakure. Something they weren't able to get when they were allies. Something that Uzushio had probably refused to give. And when someone doesn't get what they want, I'll discuss with the elders what team will be traveling and negotiate with them. You're dismissed. Shikaku's body was frozen in place for a few seconds as the whole council bar the Hokage and the elders stood up to leave the chambers. His mind went blank as realization hit him like a Nikuden Sensha, point-blank range, from his teammate, Akamichi Choza. In his subconscious, a chibi Shikaku grunted, checkmate. Konoha betrayed Uzushio. Otogakure no Sato. Underground. Since the battle between him and the Kyuubi's brat, Orochimaru spent most of the time cursing the Jinchuriki for whatever he was worth. Curse you blonde brat. It wasn't enough that Minato brat had everything I could only wish for, and now his stupid son is following his steps and more. Oh, here we go again. The Uzumaki brat had showed a level of potential he has never seen in his whole life. It dwarfed Sasuke's. Even if his little Uchiha had a good amount of raw talent due to his blood, it paled in comparison. Though, a part of him still believed Sasuke was stronger than Naruto. The only thing that irked him was the fact that Kabuto and the former Konoha's genin had heard his runts when he arrived in a condition similar to that when Hanzo had beat him and his teammates like a rag doll. It infuriated him. More so when the damn Uchiha had made cocky remarks saying that it was impossible for the so-called Dobi to be that strong, that the Sannin was weaker than he thought, and that he would, eventually, go after the blonde to serve his life's purpose, give him the power that only was he worth of. The Mangekyo Sharingan. The fool didn't even acknowledge the fact that Naruto possessed the famous Mokuden Kekkei Genkei, an. Again, they think it's a bloodline, or that he acquired skills beyond belief in a span of 3 years, like his Suiten, Fuinjutsu, and if he was correct, a raw and unseen talent for the Raiden affinity. Thinking a bit about Sasuke's training, he frowned. The fool was too arrogant for his own good, and the worst thing was that the Sannin didn't think he had the power to back it up. At the moment, Sasuke was only able to give him a decent challenge, and he wasn't even used to the new body he had transferred to. The news Kabuto brought him about Uzushiogakure was something he didn't expect it as well. He mused to himself about the possibility to acquire their knowledge on Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. That would be interesting. He could use those two to get inside, and if his hunch about the Kyuubi's brat whereabouts were right, maybe he could kill two birds with one stone. Kabuto, bring me the sound for Karen, Sasuke and Kimimaro. Another AN. Yes, Kimimaro is alive. I hope many of you like him because he will be someone that will have a role in this story. IDK why they killed him off so soon, in the canon, thus ending Kagaya's clan line. Orochimaru didn't even see if his right-hand man had acknowledged his order. His mind was already racing through plans to get some of the precious, dangerous and powerful Uzumaki's higjutsus. Karen and Tayuya, unbeknownst to them, they had Uzumaki's blood running in their veins. Karen more than the Genjutsu specialist, but the latter's purpose, along with the rest of the Sound 4, was only to protect the medic redhead to access their vaults, though, he wouldn't tell her why it had to be specifically her. Oh no. The Sannin didn't expect Karen or the others to betray him, but it was better to be safe than sorry. The plan was simple but effective. They wouldn't be suspicious about the sudden appearance of two Uzumakis. Both girls would explain that they heard the recent news of their home being rebuilt to its full glory again, and that they didn't waste any time in coming back to their family. They wouldn't suspect a thing due to their family's foolish ideology. Being an extremely good censor, Karen would be able to fool the praying eyes that would be watching them in the shadows, in case they suspected anything, and as soon as they lost them, she would reverse summon the rest of the Sound 4, Kimimaro and Sasuke. While they hide in the shadows, Tayuya would look out for their knowledge and any type of jutsus, while Karen would, hopefully, locate Naruto for Sasuke and Kimimaro to take him down and retrieve his body for experiment. Due to the village being recently formed, the Uzukage, who was yet to reveal himself, was most likely busy with all the paperwork that comes with ascension of any village. He, himself, had cursed those damn documents that seemed to randomly and somehow appear on his office located in the underground. Simple, but effective. Iwagakure no Sato, Tsuchikage's office. Ryotenbin no Onoki, Sandame Tsuchikage, was widely known for being a stubborn old man. That, and his Keke Toda, Jinten, and for hating Yondaime Hokage with all his might. Though, he wasn't a man known for showing any, not even a slightest, amount of fear. That's why, at that moment, his granddaughter, Kurodachi, and his personal bodyguard, Akatsuchi, were slightly apprehended seeing the rare show of emotions, specifically, the pale expression of their cages. This can't be. Known for her impatience and cocky remarks, Kuratsuchi stomped the floor with her foot, gazing over the old fool. What's up, Oji-san? You finally snapping? Akatsuchi was about to scold the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, even if he too was curious about what could get the old man so riled up, though he had a vague idea, but before he could give her a warning, the Iwagakure's leader spoke. Everyone could detect the fear in his voice from miles away. We call for an emergency council meeting right this instant. I don't care what they're doing. If they aren't in our chambers in 30 minutes, I'll make all of them disappear in the next second. Go. Akatsuchi immediately nodded as his body was reduced to dust the moment his leader finished relaying the orders. Kuratsuchi was about to make another reply, but the hard gaze her grandfather gave her stopped whatever she was going to say. It actually scared her seeing the old man like that. She just exited the room and would wait for an explanation later on. In the office, however, Onoki had his old mind racing through the significance of this news. It was a dangerous topic. He was sure that the small portion of the army that survived Uzushio's destruction reported no Uzumakis alive. Though, Later on, everyone heard about Uzumaki Kushina, who became a renowned kenjutsu and fuinjutsu user all over the world, arguably the strongest kunoichi to ever set a foot on the elemental nations. So, it could be possible that another Uzumaki had survived, but who? Someone who would be able to not just rebuild it, but succeed in keeping it in secret from everyone. This was troubling. The only possible way was to renovate the barriers all around the island to keep everyone away from trying to surpass the strong whirlpools and find the vault. During its destruction, no one was able to enter the supposed Uzukage's tower, and many villages had tried but failed bypass the seals when suddenly after some years, the whirlpools that surrounded the island became more wild, and by then, everyone thought that its former barriers or some type of failsafe just reactivated, thus they stopped trying to acquire their knowledge. But it seems it was the work from an Uzumaki who actually survived the invasion. And if that was indeed true, the man or woman who was leading the village probably held a massive grudge all over the nations. Though, it came as a surprise when he read reports about the alliance with Kumogakure, as they too participated in their demise, which doubled the amount of threat they were. Maybe that fool old war hawk could provide the code to break the seals again. What to do? What to do? Uzushiogakure no Sato. Random training grounds. Two figures were standing in the clearing, both analyzing one another. The boy on the left has spiky blonde hair, some red streaks were visible on it, two bangs framing either side of his face. He was wearing his traditional black armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit, numerous plates constructing this armor, reminiscent of the clan's war era. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore two bands on each armor. White bandages wrapped around his ankles followed by black sandals. Kusanagi safely secured on the right side of his waist. On his left side, a mask was firmly stuck there. He had an impassive face while looking towards the man in front of him. Said man has spiky silver hair, a mask covering everything from below his nose. He was wearing a dark red flak jacket, dark blue pants, and a long-sleeve shirt. Fingerless gloves with metal plates on the backhand. His Hittite with the insignia of Uzushiogakure embedded on it, normally covering his left eye, was now tilted upwards, showing his implanted 3 tomoid Sharingan. He had a lazy expression on his face, though, the younger boy could easily tell how his muscles were tense. Both were wearing a piece of fabric in common, though, in different colors, a black armband on Kakashi's and dark red on Naruto's left bicep. Naruto's had a kanji, that red hydra, visible to the eye, the other had a kanji for Shugosha. The ranking system implemented by the current Uzukage, Uzumaki Gensai, he used the knowledge he had over mythological beings or sea monsters and named them accordingly. Akuma no Kujira, Devil Whale Unit, the group that specializes on trap making. The Explosion Corps. Karakan Tani, Kraken Unit, the Barrier Unit. This group is responsible for the safekeeping of their village. A person of this unit, through the many uses the barrier has, will check out whoever bypasses the seals protecting the island, from his intentions to his or her chakra, and then see if it matches with any of their villagers. This process is done unknowingly as soon as a person crosses any of the hidden seals all over the ocean surrounding Uzushio. Naruto Tani, Sea Nymphs Unit, the Seduction Corps. Mojin Tani, Shark Unit, the Medical Corps. Tsukura Tani, Skyla Unit, the Assault Unit. Kyodana Habi, Midgard Serpent Unit, the Tracker Unit. Yumibozu Tani, Sea Priests Unit, Intelligence and Torture Corps. Uzu Go no Shugosha, 5 Whirlpool Guardians, known to house the 5 strongest shinobis of the village that only answered to the Uzukage or their commander. And a few others. There was no Chunin or Junin rank. As soon as a genin gets promoted, said person goes through a test to see which area he or she specializes. Inside those respective units, there are several other ranks ranging from novice to captain. Each person that gets to join a specific corps are given 1 year to adapt, train and learn from the seniors, and as soon as that year ends, she is tested on her specialization, and if failed, they will be demoted to the reserves. Said reserves will only be called in case a squad is missing a person, Meanwhile, that person will be given jobs such as guard the gates, patrolling inside the village, etc. With this system, the mortality rate was very low. It was easy to organize a squad in case of need. The fact that it requires a certain level of skill to pass the test after a year, it made everyone relieved that they could count on whoever they were to be partnered with. All of those factions answered to the Uzukage and to their commander. The Hydra. Whoever gets into Hydra position was or would be, to many, the strongest shinobi in the village. Some said that whoever gets to the Hydra position will most likely be the successor to the current Uzukage. Said person wears the distinctive dark red armband and a mask which had a design of multi-headed dragon-like beast. It was the blonde-haired who finally broke the silence that had extended for a few minutes. Though, the flat tone almost sent a shiver to Kakashi's spine. We didn't have much time to talk since I retrieved you all, and with everything going on it was literally impossible. Guess it was to be expected that you would join the 5 Guardians of Uzu. Though, I'm surprised you actually accepted Gensai-sensei's offer to join the group since they are a very busy group. Kakashi gave his former student an eye smile. Honestly, even he was surprised with himself when he accepted the proposition without any hesitation, but after a while he shook it off to wanting to help his little cute student's future goals. He spoke his thoughts. I guess so. I've been training pretty hard myself during the last few years. But, here, the Ninken summoner grabbed his precious orange book out of his kunai pouch as another eye smile appeared on his face. A few giggles instantly followed his next statement. Old habits, die hard. Naruto's sweat dropped at the familiar antics. Though, the next second his gaze hardened and the way he said the next few words actually sent a few chills down Kakashi's spine this time. Hope you ready for wasting my time all those years ago. Mokuden. Naruto clapped his hands in a praying-like motion. Kakashi was immediately put on guard as the pressure in the atmosphere became suddenly too heavy. He still couldn't believe that his sensei's son had improved this much in just few years. Jukai Kuden. The ground beneath them trembled and without any warnings thousands of massive tree trunks exploded from it. The sheer number and density of the trees made Kakashi sweat drop. Isn't that a bit too much for a simple spar? Amegakure no Sato. Tower. Konan is a woman that could easily read a person's emotions through their body language. She had mastered that art. At the moment, she was hearing the real leader of the Akatsuki reporting his findings, but it was the news of the return of Uzushiogakure that made the beautiful Aim no Tenshi narrow her eyes at the death body of her former teammate and friend, Yahiko. The orange-haired was slowly moving towards somewhere while hearing what Toby found, and as soon as the word Uzushiogakure left his mouth, his body froze. It wasn't a natural body's reaction, as all 6 paths bodies didn't show any type of emotion since they were already dead. It was the fact that the real body, Nagato, who was hiding at the top of the highest building in AIM, stopped giving any type of commands. It was only for a second and he doubted the so-called Uchiha Madara saw it, since he had his eye somewhere else, but his blue-haired long-time friend noticed. They were snapped out of their thoughts as the founder of the Uchiha clan spoke. It's going to be a pain in the... I guess it's time to show up myself since Sasori died a few months ago. We are way behind the schedule. By this time we should already have the first 2 bijus sealed. We only succeeded in sealing the Ikibi. Send Deidara along with myself to capture Sanbi. Zetsu reported that it's about to reform somewhere between Uzu and Mizu no Kuni. It was Nagato's companion who immediately replied. What about Uzushio? Uzu no Kuni is part of their territory. Don't worry about them. The other nations except Kumogakure will be making them busy enough for us to travel through their borders without worry. Pain was quiet the whole time while hearing the man plotting against Sanbi and the remaining bijus. Right now he had his mind on the newly reformed village. It was an expected reaction since he, too, was an Uzumaki. During the time Yahiko was alive, one of his dreams, he had vowed to himself, was to rebuild his ancestors' home, though, That dream went downhill or was basically forgotten when the accident where he killed his best friend happened. He had to think about this before making any rash decisions. Hi Madara. I'll give the instructions in the next Akatsuki's meeting. Madara looked over the orange-haired body for a few seconds before grunting Uchiha-like. With a joyful voice, he waved his hand to his comrades as the air around him distorted and slowly engulfed his body. Toby will see you next time. Bye-bye. Uzushiogakure no Sato. Training grounds. Inside of a newly formed forest you could hear metal clashing on metal. Two blurs once again met on top of one of the thousands branches clashing their respective swords. Kakashi's was smaller but not less dangerous, the Hako Chakura too. The white blur clashed against the black blur of the Kaminoikari. Denko Nagashi, lightning stream. Kakashi flinched as his body was engulfed in a stream of electricity unleashed from his opponent's Nodashi. He would be badly injured if it wasn't for his main affinity being Raiden. Naruto used his unoccupied left hand to deliver a palm thrust on his former sensei's chest that sent him flying back. He released a few breaths before gazing over the torn and bloody form of the White Fang's son. He immediately tensed as Kakashi's hand was engulfed in lightning before he launched it in the form of a hound. The Uzumaki member raised an eyebrow at the impressive speed and the cord of lightning that connected the hound to Kakashi's hand. Oh, it seems he's able to control it, so I can't dodge. Then. Raiden. Raiju Suga, lightning release, lightning beast tracking fang. It howled to the skies as it got closer to Naruto, who by now had gathered a good chunk of his chakra into his left hand. A small whirlwind-like ball immediately took shape before he too lunged it forward in even higher speeds. Futon. Rasen K's Mari, wind release, spiraling wind ball. The effects were instantaneous. As soon as the whirlwind ball met the lightning beast, it completely annihilated the hound before it kept going towards Kakashi, who had his Sharingan eye widened in shock. Impossible. I can't dodge it. His Sharingan was spinning wildly and soon started to take a shape into a new form or pattern. Kamui. Naruto's ice blue eyes widened in shock as the space, air around his technique distorted and soon sucked his jutsu to God knows where. He took notice of the new pattern of the former Konoha's Junin. Just like during Gaara's rescue. So that's the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Truly frightening. Naruto noticed his former sensei breathing became very heavy and immediately came to the conclusion that since he hadn't Uchiha's blood running through him, it must take a huge toll on his reserves. He idly noticed the similarities of this technique over the one that called himself Uchiha Madara used. Maybe it was a technique that comes with the Mangekyo. Maybe he could ask some Uchiha. Naruto shook his head. There were no Uchihas alive, well, no power-hungry Uchihas at least. The blonde-haired watched as Kakashi ate a chakra and blood pill and had to grimace as when their battle was over. His senior would probably resting for a whole week thanks to the secondary effects of eating those pills. Well, he deserves it. Sunagakure no Sato. Casecage's office. Gaara released a sigh of frustration. Since his rescue, the council has been nagging him over the alliance with Konohagakure. They were scared that two Mons were able to penetrate their defenses and kidnap the Casecage, and so, they were demanding for an alliance, at least, with one of the 5 great nations. They regretted the fact that they had strained the peace treaty they had signed after the Chunin exams invasion because of a single boy, Uzumaki Naruto, and now, in their opinion, were paying the price. It was understandable, in Gaara's opinion, but the fact that they wanted the so-called Almighty Konoha as an ally left him a bad taste in his mouth. After he refused and that there were another options such as the new Kurigakure or this new reformed Uzushiogakure, the problem with the latter was that it wasn't considered one of the 5. Many of the councillors started to think twice when they voted on the former Ikibi's Jinchuriki to be the Godime Casecage. Needless to say, there was a division between those who wanted a new cage and the minority part that wanted to still serve under and had their beliefs on the current Casecage. Gaara and Temari, the latter being one of his bodyguards or assistants, were slightly anxious as they were still at young age, and the idea of Sunagaker, their home, turned into a bloodbath scenario shook them to the very core. What they didn't know was that that thought was about to turn into a reality as two figures, in the western part of Sunagaker, gazed over their army. In the shadows stood a few squads with a blank mask with a kanji for Nei engraved on it. It's time to get our beloved village, once again, on par with the other nations. We will not stand for being considered the weakest of the 5 feet anymore. We will make our ancestors proud, today. The figure, standing on side of the man who just made the motivational speech, gazed over the cheering crowd before locking eyes with the man once again. Did someone write out that speech for you? No one takes you to be that kind of person, Baki-sensei. The now revealed Baki, Sunagaker's Junin, looked over the proud form of his student on his side before letting a small smirk grace his lips as he replied. A ninja must see through deception, am I right? Konkuro. The older brother of the current Cage crossed his arms while letting out a grunt as he turned his eyes, once again, to their army. I guess so. Back to Uzushiogakure no Sato. Your strength overall has improved, not bad. Kakashi smiled at the appraise his now superior gave him before letting the unconsciousness claim him. Naruto huffed in boredom. He kinda expected for his former sensei to give him more of a challenge. He was actually surprised that he was able to keep going for that long before finally fainting because of chakra and physical exhaustion. Sending a clone to pick up the former Junin and carry him to the hospital, he decided to take a trip around the village since he had nothing else to do. The teenager could never stop himself to be marveled every time his eyes landed on the eccentric buildings and the cheerful population of Uzushiogakure. It was many times better than the likes of Konoha for sure. While walking around the village, childs and teens to grown-ups to retired shinobis or civilians alike bowed to him. His armband around his left bicep stood proudly to the display of the population. Though, you could see from the many eyes that landed on his figure that they weren't bowing for fear but awe, respect and mainly, proud that they were being protected by one of their own. Sometimes many children grew up a backbone and asked for an autograph, which Naruto gladly accepted while giving a few advices to the hopefuls to be shinobis. They expressed their gratitude and dream to, one day, be strong and cool like him. Naruto couldn't help himself but smile at the future prospects and being their role model. He made sure to always warn them that the shinobi world wasn't a playground and that it was much darker than it seems, but, if they had anyone worthy to protect, they would be, undoubtedly, stronger and perhaps, one day, stronger than him. Although, even if the childs weren't able to read underneath that weird, in their opinion, concept or cryptic words, the adults all around them could only nod in approval and proud that this young man was so protective over their future generation. Naruto suddenly stopped in his tracks as a familiar voice he hasn't heard for a few days already, spoke to him. Naruto, it's time. He gave an hesitant unconscious nod before he vanished from the spot he was standing, towards Uzukage's tower. Kurigakure no Sato. Mizukage's office. Mei Terumi, the new Godime Mizukage, stood behind her desk reading the reports and the confirmation of some rumors going around for some time. She had read the documents only to the eye of the Mizukage about the destruction of Uzushiogakure. Needless to say, she was baffled at the stupidity of the Nadaime Mizukage at that time, though, the part that consisted of her cage's mind saw the real reason and the need behind the invasion. Kiri at that specific time didn't exactly have a good military power, compared to, for example, Iwagakure, and there were rumors that Uzushio would replace Kiri in the foods chain. The gorgeous auburn-haired let out an unladylike grunt. This could be catastrophic if the current leader of Uzushio knew everything about the invasion. He would probably hold a grudge over her village. Maybe she could send a scroll to ask for a meeting between them and resolve the matter without shedding any blood. She had had enough of it. The civil war ended recently and the busty woman didn't plan to enter another war so soon. Ow! Call the fastest bird we have available if you would. The Byakugan's wielder, not that many knew, looked over his leader trying to decipher why would she need that. Though as soon as he saw a sickly smile grow on her features, he immediately vanished from the office before he could anger her, knowing already what would follow. Thanks to that, he totally missed the Mizukage's smirk. He's learning. Uzushiogakure no Sato, sacred location, Kami no Umi, divine seas. Naruto sat in a cross-legged position in the white floor, could he call it floor? All around him was basically and literally white. It was like a void, but instead of black, it was white. It was a weird scenario for the Uzumaki member who stiffened slightly as he felt the sudden presence of his master. Gaki. Naruto's eyebrow twitched, getting a smile of amusement out of Gensai. This is a sacred place that our ancestors used to relax and have access to their inner spirits so they could be. How would you say? Be one with them. Everyone has hatred within their hearts. What many don't know is that inner spirit is boosted with those negative emotions. And so, our ancestors created this place, with the help of thousands of seals, to have access, confront and finally become complete. Naruto already knew that after reading the private Uzu's library that only a few had access, but he felt that his sensei wanted to show how proud he was of their heritage. Since he had the Kyuubi sealed inside of him, his hatred, jealousy and few other negative emotions were transferred to the beast instead of his inner spirit. One could say that instead of having an inner spirit, he had an inner demon. There will be no yummy Naruto, even if I kinda like the idea, though I'm the opinion of that Naruto should have changed his attitude when they became one. Now that I remember, didn't he proclaim that he would be cooler than his father? Lol. Guess what, bitch? As soon as his sensei stopped ranting about the awesomeness of the Uzumakis and how they once sealed the whole ocean. How the hell did it come to that? He didn't know. He focused. His eyes closed as he started to inhale and exhale evenly. Mindscape. Over the years, Naruto had changed the scenario from the degrading sewer to a huge forest and an artificial sun washing over the clearing. Naruto opened his dark blue eyes, immediately locking onto the pair of slitted red eyes. He was about to speak, but the humongous fox in front of him cut him off. This is your final test, hope you remember our deal. Fail, and I'll take over your body, though, you don't need to worry as I'll fulfill your goals first before settling down. Pass, and you'll be able to use my chakra on a whole new level. The blonde-haired gazed over his companion since he was born for a few seconds. Stealing his resolve, he took a few steps forward before he finally came to a stop as a paper that had a kanji for seal embedded on it stood proudly attached to a stone wall. That same wall was basically to put a limitation to the space that Kyuubi could travel. He had tried to remove or shape it into something like a necklace, but that stupid thing had as its purpose to stop the demon in case it wanted to reach its host. For the first time, Naruto placed his hand over the seal and slowly started to remove said seal. It was only by halfway that suddenly a hand grabbed his wrist. The pressure forced him to let the paper go before he was thrusted backwards in a rude manner. The sound of footsteps approaching met his ears and he immediately locked eyes with the person that just stopped him from doing whatever he was about to do, wanting to pummel, whoever the person was, to the ground. Blue eyes met dark blue eyes. The former had a scowl on his face, the latter's face soon, too, contorted into a murderous scowl. It seems I'll finally have the opportunity to set you on the right path. Dark blue eyes started to give off sparks of electricity as he heard those words coming out of the mouth of the person that once in the past was his idol. Naruto was about to give his own remark as his body was already trembling in rage, but was cut off. Yondaime. A loud demonic voice shook the whole mindscape, though the blonde-haired adult didn't give it any attention, and a second later he blurred through many hand seals before slamming a hand on the ground. A large array of seals appeared visible to the eye. Inten. Kuchio's no jutsu, yin release, summoning technique. Kyuubi halted in his rage moment as his eyes widened in shock at this new feeling that washed over him. It felt so familiar, It was just like. Oh no, it can't be. A huge plume of smoke engulfed a good chunk of the clearing. Naruto was sent back from the sheer pressure of it before a loud roaring made him look upwards, and soon his eyes widened in shock and fear as in front of him stood Roar. Dark burnt orange, almost brown colored, nine tails swirling dangerously on the back of a huge fox. Slitted red eyes looking down on the wide-eyed Naruto, a menacing grin came over its features as Namikaze Minato, that was on the top of Beast's head, spoke. After this is over, you'll be serving Konoha.